Well, can everyone hear me? I hope I've got everything set up for this correctly. I had to reinstall OBS and do all the fun stuff that comes with reconfiguring your streaming software from scratch because I tried to stream R Factor 2 yesterday, and everyone's favorite company in sim racing right now, and that is Motorsport Games. So these first few minutes, obviously, I'm just going to be hanging out, not showing anything on the screen, checking the audio, hoping to hear you guys say, hey, everything sounds good, and I'm coming through loud and clear, and you can at least see what I'm streaming before we get started, because this is going to be an adventure. Again, I got all these little chat overlays popping up on my end, trying to make sure everything is connected. My notes are in order. My hyperlinks, there's like 50 of them, are in order. I've got Microsoft Edge, which is my secondary browser that I'll be showing on the stream. Uh, Looks good and all that fun stuff. It's gonna be a pretty big adventure. Sound is perfect, audio is good, we're alive. That's good to hear. So let's give some background. The past month or so in sim racing has been quite interesting. This massive company that popped up basically out of nowhere by the name of Motorsport Games is really not who they say they are. And I don't want to take full credit for finding all this stuff. It was passed to me by what it seems to be a Motorsport Games employee or a former investor. But someone contacted me on Twitter and fed me absolutely everything I'm about to show you, or pretty close to everything, including some of the more out there articles and hyperlinks to places that sim racers would not typically look. And I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. And I've done a couple videos on it, and the reception has been quite interesting, which is why I'm doing this video. Half the people who watched my stuff were like, dude, I hate you, but you found something absolutely crazy, and like, this is like seriously good journalism. And the other half of people think I'm a shit disturber, and that I'm drawing improper conclusions, and that I'm just some schizo making false accusations against the company, and I don't know anything about what I'm talking about. And I'd say a third smaller group essentially dismissed the story because there's so much stuff to sift through that most sim racing content creators just look at this and be like, bro, I'm not reading 20 links. I'm not reading through two different lawsuits that are each like 50 pages long. So guess what we're doing tonight, boys? We're going to read through all of it because it's funny. I would have multiple bags of popcorn ready because ideally this is going to take me up to the USFL kickoff tonight. I'm a fan of shitty football leagues, and I realized I have 4 free hours of my day before football starts, and I get to laugh at an empty USFL stadium. So let's do this. Is everyone ready? Anyways, let us pop up Microsoft Edge here. I use Firefox for like my personal browsing, but I don't want any of my porn showing up, so we use Edge so it doesn't like autofill anything like that when I type into the address bar. But this is the full arsenal. This is all my sources. We're going to go through them one by one. We're going to read them, and guys who are on the fence saying I'm spreading rumors, guys who are refusing to run the story, as some sim publications are going to look like idiots. Guys who, I believe there is a video by overtake.gg today, basically did a video and he's like, oh yeah, like some content creators are drawing certain connections, but I don't really want to get into that. We're going to get into that today. So this is everything. So, scroll up to my notepad page here. Again, hopefully everything's showing on the stream correctly. It appears to be, so I'll minimize Firefox and focus on screen number 1. Let's scroll to the very top. Let's go back to 2004. This starts in 2004. This has nothing to do with Motorsport Games. Phase 1 of this stream is about establishing context for why Motorsport Games operates the way they do. And this was all fed to me, again, by someone who was on a Twitter burner account, but is probably an employee at MSGM, or was part of like an investment group with them, or was a former investor, or just somebody. So Dmitry Kosko's origin, who's the current CEO of Motorsport Games, the guy that's always appearing in interviews and answering questions. So his history goes back to a company called Net Element. And this is just like a random tech startup company. So here is their like staff information page. Costco and a guy named Mike Zoy, who's also behind, I believe, the Motorsport brand. They do like auto racing journalism. Started this random tech company in like 2004. They went and tapped this guy named Oleg Fire as their CEO. These are only 3 names you really need to know. Costco, Zoe, and Fire. Okay? So let's go look up who Oleg Fire is. So this is an article written about him in, I believe, 2013 by Inc. magazine. Okay? So this is where we're at. When was this written? Fuck, it doesn't say. Oh, you know what? 2012-09 in the hyperlink. So this is written in late 2012. Meet number 1, Oleg Fire of Unified Payments. How a poor immigrant kid from Brooklyn wound up running a Unified Payments number 1 on the 2012 Inc. 500 with a 3-year growth rate of 23,000%. Okay. So this is Oleg. Say hi to Oleg. Poster boy for the American dream, quite possibly. Born in the Soviet Union, Oleg Fire arrived in Brooklyn, New York at age 12. Grew up in the borough's Brighton Beach neighborhood. He worked hard, avoided delinquents and drugs, and at 17 started his first business, a cell phone retailer. Barely into his 20s and without a college degree, Fire was serving as a VP at a publicly traded communications company. In 2007, at 29, he co-founded Unified Payments. The company now processes $10 billion worth of transactions for 100,000 merchants a year, and it's still growing fast. Now 35, Fire and his family live in Miami. He drives to work in a Bentley. Life, he says, is good. And he basically just does a small autobiographical piece of what his life was like and how he went from being a teenager, being slowly working his way up through various companies. And it's like a traditional American dream story, right? It's a fluff piece, and a lot of these are written. It's not a big deal. But anyways, they tap this guy, and he makes a shit ton of money, and now he has a Bentley, and he's the CEO of Net Element, that this company that Dmitry Kosko and Mike Zoe started back in 2004. So they tap this guy. So we got some problems. Net Element by 2013 or 2014 is being openly talked about as a scam. So this is a site called Investors Hub. It's like the investor world equivalent to like Race Department or like the sim racing subreddit. Basically, there's all kinds of different forums for like just discussing like trading advice, just like there is for sim racing forums, right? So a post on November 17th, 2014, and this is like a 6,000 post thread. This is crazy, right? History on Net Element. So what is this company that Oleg is the CEO of and Costco and Mike Zoe founded? Net Elements was formed as a tech company and went public in 2012 with main focus on Russian entertainment industry and TOT Money, which is an SMS payment company in Russia. So in 2013, Net Element acquired Unified Payments, which at the time was heavily in debt after their CEO Oleg Fire went on a wild borrowing spree to claim the number 1 rank on the Inc. 500. So that fluff piece that we just showed you about Oleg Fire and how great he was, yeah, it's all bullshit. This is just something that happens in this industry, in this world. People just essentially do shady things to just work their way up and get fluff pieces written about them. That borrowing spree practically bankrupted Unified Payments. Oleg Fire had no choice but to allow Net Element to acquire Unified Payments for $0 and consume their $28 million in debt. Now, although Oleg Fire was successful in negotiating almost 3 million shares of Net Element stock, which triggers only when Net Element stock reaches $9 per share, plus a comfortable salary plus bonuses. So, in 2013, Net Element was able to corner founders of Appetito Mobile Payments into acquisition. So just all these random tech companies are just buying each other, and they're all just wildly unsuccessful, going on spending sprees, losing a shit ton of money, but the CEO's driving around in a Bentley, so just don't ask questions, and we have a beautiful toenail on the left side of the screen. I'm sorry about that. Appetito? How the fuck do you say that? Was used as bait to raise significant capital for Net Element. Appetito's founders did not receive a single share for over 1.6 years and will shortly file a lawsuit against Net Element and its CEO, Oleg Fire, for breach of contract, fraud, deceptive and unfair trade practices, and copyright infringement of its mobile payment software. So, Costco starts this company and taps this Oleg Fire guy to run this company, and everything about this company and just the way they operate and the companies they buy up is just shady as fuck. Why are they not hiring, reasonable people to run a reasonable company, and why are they just immediately in a whole bunch of shit? So, 2013 to 2014, Net Element was losing money faster than they can print then, and was forced to shut down their entertainment department and write off the losses. Things get even worse when the original founders of TOT Money bursted into Net Element Moscow office with guns. Okay. TOT Money founders were also allegedly screwed by Net Element's CEO and started a new company by taking all their employees away from Net Element, along with some of the largest accounts, which took away some of the revenues away from NetElement. This is a fuck. This is already a fuck. We're one link in. Situation got so bad in 2013 that NetElement was unable to make payroll, pay its sales agents and developers. Many folks quit at NetElement, was on the brink of a bankruptcy. That's when Oleg Fire made a desperate under-the-table move and borrowed millions from shady offshore characters by agreeing to convert debt into equity of NetElement shares shortly after loans were taken out. Fire was then able to raise the stock price from 88 cents to 5.75 practically overnight by just dumbfounded press releases and secretly purchasing shares through third parties to continuously raise the stock price. Conveniently enough, every insider cashed out between the short-lived stock inflation. This is a fuck. This is already a fuck. And I'm sorry about the fucking toe fungus, but, you know, it kind of shows what's going on here. So this is already a fuck. Why is Dimitri tapping this guy to run his old company? This guy's a fuck. Right? This whole thing is a mess. We're two links in. Why is he running in circles with shady fucking people who basically get like fake press releases written about them? As we just saw, meet number one. Here's him cruising around in his Bentley. Oh, but he's a massive scam artist, apparently. Great. Absolutely great. Why is Dimitri associating himself with these people? Right? That's my first question. So then we go to Barron's. This is fun. Let's go to Google. Because the way you get around the paywall is pasting this link into Google. It's weird. Just bear with me here. Company that couldn't invest straight. No, I don't want a subscription. Fuck you. Anyways, I hope this whole article shows. Let's go. So the tech company that could invest straight. This is like a retrospective on just NetElement as a whole, to show you how much of a fuck this was. NetElement's leaders ring Nasdaq's opening bell on October 4th, 2012. From left to right, Francesco, James Kahn, Mike Zoy, and Kengis Rakishev. I don't know who these people are, but Mike Zoy is a familiar name. One of the stocks boosted in the recent blockchain mania is NetElement, a small firm that offers a big lesson in the unlikely personal connections and influences that modern global markets facilitate. Behind this microcap stock at various times were a Kazakh oligarch, tax shelter touts, Wall Street crooks, a porno financer, CNBC pundit John Najarian, and Godfather star James Caan. Oh, and the Miami-based company's chief is also Grenada's ambassador to Russia. There's even a brief appearance by the hedge fund Platinum Partners, which later collapsed as its bosses Murray Huberfeld and Mark Nordlit were arrested. Huberfeld was charged with bribing a union official to invest in Platinum, while a separate case alleges that Nordlit helped run Platinum as a billion-dollar Ponzi fraud. They are fighting the charges. This company is a fuck. We're 2 paragraphs in. Okay. So NetElement is sketchy, and we're just 2 paragraphs in. Despite these collective efforts, the stock's been a stinker. Hey, does that sound familiar? It should. Dropping from $10 from its debut 5 years ago at the equivalent of $1,075, adjusting for 1 for 10 reverse splits, as the business accumulated $165 million in losses. So this company sounds great. Good job, Dimitri. NetElement, which processes charge card transactions for websites, has also bounced from business fad to business fad, evolving from a Russian music service like Spotify to a Russian payment processor like Square, and most recently raising money to become a cryptocurrency play. In the 5 years since board member Khan rang the Nasdaq opening bell alongside Kengis Rakishev, the 38-year-old chairman of NetElement. So basically, this company is a massive fuck. It's run just like Motorsport games. They have no idea what the fuck they're even making. They're just buying up random companies. They're tanking their stock price. Everything's a fuck. They're losing $165 million. Nobody knows what they're doing, and there's just all these random people connected to scams involved with this company. And Dimitri started it. Why is Dimitri running in these circles? Why is he hiring these people to run his company? Why is he involved with random fucking people, like, on this level? Everything is a fuck, and we're not even at Motorsport games yet. Let's keep going. So, these are long articles. I'm going to try and skim through them. Anyways, does this stock graph look kind of like Motorsport games? Sure, it does. Our attempts to interview NetElement directors Najarian and Khan were unsuccessful, but a glimpse of the company's history is available from examining hundreds of emails between board chairman Rakishev and business associates at the company and elsewhere that were anonymously posted on the internet in 2015. So, like, Just like people are from Motorsport Games are supposedly leaking shit about the company to guys like the track announcer from Orange Show Speedway, this happened with Net Element as well. It's not good. Rakashev's emails were among thousands belonging to Kazakhstan's elite that the country's government said had been hacked. It asked a U.S. District Court to bar them from use by a group of Kazakh journalists, but was turned down. Barron's reviewed the allegedly hacked emails in a database maintained by the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, a non-profit journalism group based in Eastern Europe. Basically, and again, here's the stock price on what appears to be the Nasdaq. It's the Motorsport Games stock all over again. Let's keep going. The stock is at Net Element started as a blank check offering in 2010, underwritten by now shuttered investment bank Rodman and Renshaw. Blank check deals raise money for a group that promises they'll use it to acquire and build good businesses. This is what Motorsport Games is. It's not a tech company. It's a blank check deal. This is what Net Element was too. This particular blank check outfit, Cazador Acquisition, raised $46 million for its chief executive Jay Johnson, based on his emerging markets experience at Dutch Bank and at the sovereign debt activist fund Gramercy Advisors. And they basically go on about this. So in 2012, Cazador found a business to buy, this blank check outlet. They're going to buy a Miami-based internet company called Net Element, owned by someone, Pio Venetti, met in amateur Ferrari races. That would be Mike Zoy, according to financial filings. So that's Mike Zoy's kind of background, is he ran in Ferrari challenge races, and they just kind of met. By then, Johnson had retired from the day-to-day operations of Cazador to start an assault rifle maker. That sounds cool. Where a spokesperson told us Mr. Johnson exited Cazador long before the Net Element acquisition and has no knowledge nor involvement in it. Okay. Pio Venetti's racing chum Mike Zoy had assembled Net Element from a variety of internet properties, including a filmmaker's website overseen by actor Khan and an online music service with content from Igor Krutoy, the impresario who ran Russia's counterpart to American Idol. In a major coup, Zoy got Kengis Rakashev to take a 28% stake in Net Element and sign on as the merged company's chairman. But, just like Motorsport Games, Net Element's internet businesses were proving to be duds. Traffic and advertising didn't grow. This sounds familiar. So March 2013, Net Element said it would buy a charge card processor called Unified Payments, which Inc. magazine, which we just looked at, had just crowned America's fastest growing company, with revenue growing at a 23,000% rate. It was ridiculous. Its chief executive, Oleg Fire, told Inc. that he'd been a poor immigrant kid from Odessa who now drove to his Miami office in a Bentley. It's not the first time they brag about their car collection. It is very rare to see a young company with such an impressive growth record, Rakashev said in the announcement. Fire became Net Element's new CEO. And this gets funny now. But securities filings show that Fire's payment processing business was burdened with tax liens and in need of cash at the time of acquisition. Although the tax liens had been removed from the acquired business just prior to purchase, cash was still tight at Net Element. We are now out of cash, the company's financial chief told Rakashev in an April 2013 email, one that was published anonymously online. 4 days later, Fire wrote Rakashev that Net Element would be unable to make next week's payroll unless the chairman could find them additional capital. Hey, this sounds like Motorsport Games Q4 2021 investor call. Like, word for word. Hilarious. When I became the CEO of Net Element, I inherited its great financial troubles, Fire told Barron's, which, we're looking at those articles right now. Those troubles persisted. For the 2013 year, Net Element reported revenues of just $19 million and a loss of close to $50 million. So overall, they lost like $30 million bucks. This sounds like Motorsport Games. And again, we are not even at Motorsport Games. We're at the precursor to Motorsport Games. That's why this is so hilarious. This all happened before. And all the same people were involved. In conference calls with investors, Fire talked up the company's exciting prospects as a mobile payments processor in Russia and the former Soviet states, but the losses that continued into 2014. In February 2014, a Net Element director wrote Rakashev that unless the company got an emergency financial infusion, business will not survive another 10 days. They're saying this in the Motorsport Games investor calls, too. We'll get to that. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. So Net Element brought in close to $40 million in 2014, with $27 million of that from new investors in Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, according to the company. Even so, the shares continue to sink under sales by early shareholders like Cazadores Piovanetti and NetElement founder Mike Zoy, who told the company he was no longer a restricted insider. Fire regretted in an email to Rakashev that he'd given most of his company stocks to associates like Leon Goldstein, his partner and financial backer in the payments business and other ventures. State and federal courts records in Florida show that while Fire has been running NetElement, he has suffered through years of legal battles involving his partnerships with Goldstein. Those cases involve high interest loans and investments in an adult bookstore chain. So, like, why is Dimitri involved in all of these, like, weird, crazy happenings and these crazy people? Why is he tapping these people to run his company? Why is NetElement just such a fuck? What is going on here? And it continues. It continues. A lot of the stuff is like, oh, the government deals went tits up, stuff like that. NetElement's CEO, Fire, has a Moscow connection of his own. A year ago, the Caribbean island of Grenada named him its ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary to Russia? What the fuck is that? Despite all of NetElement's powerful friends and high growth expectations, its ventures in Russia and Kazakhstan failed to bear fruit. Its revenue from international transactions fell 27% last year to just 15% of NetElement's total revenue of $60 million. Everything is just a fuck. This whole company is a fuck. So when we go to the next Barron's article, I believe it was written a few days later. Hold on, let's see. It's kind of a fuck because, again, I'm not... Nope, this is not the right article. So anyway, we hear all these great things about Oleg Fire and all that stuff. Then we get to the Miami Herald article. So remember, this guy was #1 in Inc.'s 500 list. Subscribe to continue reading. Fuck you. So we're trying to read an article about Oleg Fire here. Paywall, subscriber reading. Let's look this up, see if there's an aggregate. Oleg Fire, Miami Herald. So when do we get onto the fact that NetElement's chief financial officer, Jonathan New, is the CFO at Motorsport Games? Oops. So, long story short, fuck, how do I get past Miami Herald paywall? So, long story short, the Miami Herald article, which is somehow behind a paywall, maybe they realized my IP's accessed it so many times. Oleg Fire's rise from the edge of scams to envoy to Russia. But we'll do an audible here, because it's in Armin's video. That's not Armin. Will clearing cookies and cache work? Oh, use the Internet Archive. Good call. Sorry about this, boys. The Internet Archive bypasses it. You're funny. Don't be cheap. Pay for it. This worked. You're a mod now. Or at least I'll try. I'll see what I can do here. Oh, I can't make you a mod. Lame. So, we're doing the bad boy route. Miami Herald. How a Soviet immigrant tied to Miami Beach is Miami Beach's B-girl scam became Grenada's man in Moscow. He's been called the poster boy for the American dream, and for good reason. An immigrant kid from Brooklyn, he became the general manager of a Nobody Beats the Wiz electronics store at 17. The business journal Inc. crowned his credit card processing business the fastest growing company in America, and when that venture, Unified Payments, was bought out, the corporation that acquired it, NetElement, made him its CEO. But he's also been arrested on charge of mortgage fraud. The charge dropped and later expunged. He's been sued at least 7 times for breach of contract, including by his own lawyer. Since he took over, his new company has lost over 98% of its share value and for a time faced delisting from the NASDAQ. He's brushed up in close proximity to a rogue gallery of South Florida's most infamous financial fraudsters from the former Soviet Union, without ever getting in trouble with the law himself, save for the arrest that was wiped clean. These include husband and wife land development scammers, Victor and Natalie Wolf, and the roguish perpetrators of the B-Girl scam, in which drunk men in Miami Beach were hustled out of thousands of dollars in credit card charges at the Caviar Bar and other Russian-themed drinking holes. And a friend and fellow Soviet immigrant, Felix Feilinger, who was sentenced to 6.5 years for organizing a massive insurance fraud ring. His name is Oleg Fire. He's a classic Miami success story, and now he has a new impressive title, Ambassador Extraordinary, and whatever the fuck that word is, after being named envoy to Moscow. So we went from, hey, Oleg Fire is #1 on Inc.'s 500 to, actually, this guy is, like, closely associated to, like, scammers, and this is not good. In, what was this? This article was written in 2019, the Inc. article was 2012. 7 years. We went from, hey, this Oleg guy is sketchy. So why is Dmitry associating himself with these people? Another thing, someone pointed out in the chat. Gonna have to put this one out on a limb. Chief Financial Officer of NetElement is apparently Jonathan New. It's not on here. Let's look him up. Jonathan New, NetElement. Oh, well, there we go. Mr. New has been Chief Financial Officer of the company since October 2nd, 2012. But he eventually resigned, I guess. Or, no, that's Jonathan Fitchman. But anyway, Crunchbase says Jonathan New is with NetElement, so he's right. But I believe he's on with Motorsport Games, too. Yep, there it is. So, why is Dmitry tapping all these people associated with a company that is looking kind of like a scam to run his new company? Why is this happening? Why? Why? And Jay Calloway in the comments actually says something quite intelligent. Fastest growing business in America equals Motorsport Games, a leading racing game developer. Basically, the way they promote themselves is just weird. But, like, there it is. Now, does everything come crumbling down with this NetElement company? Yes. Long story short, yes. So we'll post this link into the browser here. Shareholder alert. Weiss Law LLP investigates NetElement. Oh, that's not good. Let's accept all the cookies. I like cookies. August 5th, 2020, PR Newswire. Weiss Law is investigating possible breaches of fiduciary duty and other violations of law by the board of directors of NetElement in connection with the proposed merger of the company with privately held electric vehicle company Mullen Technologies. So everything about this company is just massively fucking shady. Like, it's silly. It's completely silly. And it's not the only investigation going on. Because the company they merged with, this EV company, they're also under investigation. April 7th, 2022, so this is fairly recent. At least apparently that's when it was written, maybe? Yeah, it's what they came to do. Shareholder rights law firm Robbins LLP is investigating Mullen Automotive and its officers and directors to determine whether they breached their fiduciary duties and violated securities laws. Mullen is an electric vehicle company. Everything this company does is fucked up. They're always under investigation. They have a bunch of shady people working with them. The same people, or a lot of the same people that were responsible for NetElement with Costco, and I guess now Jonathan New, we've discovered, that were running around with NetElement, are suddenly all at Motorsport Games too. This is silly. So what even is Mullen? Let's go look at that now. Again, I have a notepad document. I'm just pasting the links into my Edge browser. Why investors should stay away from Mullen Automotive stock. So not only has like Net Element been a completely useless company that you should never invest in and just loses shit tons of money every year, the company they merged with is useless. Mullen is late to the EV race and does not appear to have competitive advantages. After conducting research on Mullen Automotive, I view the company as a poor man's combination of Lucid and Fisker. Since I've long been bearish on LCID and FSR stock, I'm obviously not too upbeat on MULN stock. They have some positive qualities, but long story short, no, they have a shitload of problems. Mullen does not appear to have any big-name automotive companies behind it, unlike Lucid and Fisker. Mullen is not currently producing EVs. In fact, it does not intend to start delivering an EV until 2024. By that time, the EV market will be super saturated. It was poised to sell solid-state batteries in the next 18 to 24 months. If true, that would put the company, which only spent $3 million on R&D last year, ahead of QuantumScape, which has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on developing such batteries. Mullen would also be ahead of multiple major automakers that plan to work on these batteries. Hindenburg, though, calls Mullen's claims about solid-state batteries exceedingly implausible. Mullen reported that a company called EV Grid tested its batteries and found that their range was almost double that of other top EV companies, and that they charged more quickly than other batteries. But according to Hindenburg, the CEO of EV Grid recently said that he would not have made those statements. This is just hilarious. Finally, Hindenburg wrote that Mishry led 5 failed penny stock companies prior to Mullen. 2 had their securities registration revoked by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. 2 terminated their securities registrations, and the last one merged with a speculative gold mining company. Given the huge amount of competition that Mullen will face by the time it enters the electric vehicle sector in a couple of years, so this is like a company trying to be Tesla. That's all it is. It will need all the money it can get to pay for ads, recruit top-notch marketing and advertising minds, and hire many sales professionals with great track records. It only had $42,000 worth of cash and cash equivalents on its balance sheet at the end of the fourth quarter of 2021. Yeah, it's not going anywhere. What a fucking mess. So just this whole ring of anything to do with Net Element is just bad. That's all you need to take from this. I know we spent a lot of time on this, covering this, but it establishes the context that, like, hey, this has actually been ongoing since 2004, and there's essentially a ring of guys in Florida who are all kind of bouncing around the investor world. And it's just a giant mess. And the companies they start are not really trustworthy. They're constantly under investigation. And they just go and run around and create new companies after shit hits the fan. So, in my opinion, that kind of establishes context and intent. That these guys are not just random schmucks who got into sim racing, if that makes sense, and decided, hey, let's try and make a NASCAR game, and then they fucked up at it. It's like, no, like, this has been going on for 20 years. They have a pattern of starting these companies. The companies don't do well. They always get investigated. They always get sued. It's just a giant fuck. And now here they are in sim racing. And again, what's irritated me so far with all this shit is that a lot of the sim racing websites that have, or sim racing channels who have caught wind of the story and want to make content on it, they don't want to approach this backstory because A, it's too much reading, and B, it starts getting into, oh fuck, like, there's a bit of normalcy bias going on where a lot of people just don't want to admit that, like, maybe something is really, like, big brewing here. So, that ends phase 1 of this. So, again, what I've tried to show you, there's context to what's happening at Motorsport Games. These guys aren't just trying to enter the sim racing industry and are clueless about it. It's essentially a 20-year systematic infiltration of the business world and the creation of just useless companies where they just pocket all the money they can from the investors for themselves and just run these companies at a gigantic loss and then just hope no one really notices. We noticed. So, phase 2. Motorsport Games. So after all the Net Element shit just kind of ends, right? Like, they merge with Mullen. A lot of these guys get out that were with Net Element. The company's under investigation, but they've made their millions. Motorsport Games is an American video game developer, publisher, and esports event organizer based in Miami, Florida, which is where NetElement was based out of. It was founded in 2018 as a gaming division of Motorsport Network. Who is Motorsport Network run by? Control F. Mike Zoe. For whatever reason, his name is not listed on the Wikipedia page, but like there it is. Director at Motorsport Network, based in Miami, Florida. Motorsport Games was founded in 2018 as Motorsport Network's gaming division, game developer, publisher, and esports event organizer. On August 14th, 2018, Motorsport Games acquired a 53.5% equity interest in 704 Games, who were making the NASCAR Heat titles at the time. As a result, Motorsport Games became the official developer and publisher of the NASCAR video game racing franchise, and in the same month, MSGM collaborated with the ACO to launch the Le Mans esports competition. Then in 2019, Motorsport Games released a NASCAR Heat 4 game. In May 2020, they released NASCAR Heat 5. Or no, in May 2020, 704 replaced Monster Games, then released Heat 5 in the middle of July 2020, and then they announced a deal to get a license to produce and develop games featuring the BTCC with a planned release in 2022. In 2020, during the COVID pandemic, they hosted a bunch of esports events and games that weren't theirs, such as Dirt Rally 2.0. Then they started expanding into the R-Factor Virtual Le Mans stuff. They held a bunch of esports competitions. Then the company went public in January 2021. Motorsport Games completed its initial public offering in January of 2021, raising $69 million, which is used for acquiring the remaining equity interest of 704 Games, and for acquiring KartCraft and Studio 397. So in February of 2021, they acquired KartCraft from Black Delta. Then they acquired Studio 397, which is R-Factor 2's developer. Then in July of 2021, they announced they'd release NASCAR 21 on the R-Factor physics platform with Unreal Graphics. And they'd release NASCAR 21 in October. Then they were going to say, hey, we're actually going to make a BTCC game as well in 2022. Then an IndyCar game. And they basically just showed up in the sim racing world being like, hey, we're going to release a fuck ton of different racing sims featuring as many licenses as we possibly can. Right? So that's where we are. That's essentially why this company is relevant and why we're talking about it. They showed up and essentially offered to save sim racing. And they do that. Their strategy, which is not very well spelled out in the Wikipedia entry, is that they're going to buy R-Factor 2, use R-Factor 2 as like the physics/game platform, throw Unreal Graphics into the mix, and just release a bunch of what are essentially identical games, just with all these different cars. So instead of all the cars under one roof of R-Factor 2, they would do what EA did with Image Space Incorporated in the early 2000s and release, their equivalent to F1 Challenge and NASCAR Thunder some 20 years later. I don't know if you guys know that part of sim racing history, but for EA Sports PC releases, they would essentially release R-Factor multiple times. I'll show you screenshots of it here. So, take a look at these graphics. I know it's kind of hard to tell here, but F1 Challenge and NASCAR Thunder, on the PC at least, are the exact same engine, and they just re-release the same game multiple times with different cars and different tracks and turn the same profit, or turn a decent profit that way. Essentially, that is what Motorsport Games plan to do. Now, why is this a dumb idea? Because R-Factor 2 is not very good. And I know I'm going to offend people by saying that, but this is the first sign that this company might not know what they're doing when it comes to sim racing. This was a post created in the summer of 2021 on the R-Factor 2 forum. 17-page thread, no more additions to this. This is the exact reason why I own RF2 since day one release, but never considered it to be my go-to sim for any kind of racing. And he links Ermin Hamidovic's video saying basically how crap R-Factor 2 is to play. The first comment, which I've used as a source in other videos, this is the publicity we need, particularly for those that buy the game and race offline when it is advertised as a rich offline experience. Knowing the AI cannot slipstream or even overtake when they intend to pit is bad enough. But yes, the full course hills and weather issues are also game-breaking as well. Some of these issues were introduced by Studio 397 in 2017 to 2018, and they still haven't fixed this mess. We are over halfway to 2022. Shame on Studio 397 for not even attempting to address some of the outstanding issues over the past 5 years, and shame on them for unintentionally making the AI worse as well. The attitude towards offline racing stinks, and it is very apparent just from the developer's attitude. Most AIWs are barely tested. Most of the official content regularly spins as the AI overcompensate the wheel for the slightest turns, and the priority order always changes year after year. Absolutely mind-boggling that they haven't even fixed the AI erratic throttle and braking behavior that they introduced from build 1110 in 2018. In order to have any sort of enjoyable racing offline, you need to disable flags, disable tire wear and fuel wear, and race on tracks that do not have long straights, otherwise you encounter all of the issues above. So what this establishes is that Motorsport Games entered the market and bought up rFactor 2 to try and both increase their portfolio, inflate the value of the company, and have a solid base in which they could release multiple games per year and generate a profit relatively easily, because it's not like it's very difficult to release what's essentially a payware rFactor mod, change the UI, and call it a different game. It's what EA did, like I just showed, 20 years ago with NASCAR Thunder and F1 Challenge on the PC. Except they bought a game that their own fans were saying was fucking broken. Straight up. And I know that's harsh, and I know rFactor 2 fans do not want to hear that. This is what their own fans were saying in the forum. Fully agree. Time to speak up. It's not with pleasure that I have to say no comments. It's a fairly accurate overview, which maybe could sound confronting for some, summed up like this. So just look at this. This company burst into the market, threw a bunch of money at Studio 397, when in reality this platform was really not ready for a mass market release. This was the first sign they didn't have any idea what the fuck they were doing. Second sign, and this is going to be not very professional for me to do this, but I don't care. Oh, we gotta click on the mountains and hills, boys. So, the second sign that this company is really not here to make a great game. This is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm having to do this. Oh, Jesus. Is there an employee list on Craft? Let's see if this works. No. So the site I'm trying to go to is a site called Signal Hire that lists all of the different staff members for a company. Long story short, what I'm trying to show you by going to Signal Hire is that half of the company is based in Russia or Australia, which is very strange for a company that is making almost exclusively racing simulators based on American racing series. So there's essentially 2 pages of co-workers who are legitimate workers for Motorsport Games. When you click on page 2, almost everybody's from Russia or Australia, which is why in their investor calls they say, hey, the war in Eastern Europe right now is affecting our ability to develop games at a moderate pace. Because they have a lot of Eastern European employees, which, again, doesn't make sense if you're making a NASCAR game. Like, half the staff are completely unfamiliar with the sport. What I can show you is that once they got the reins to the NASCAR Heat Series, things really shit the bed. So, hopefully you guys can see this on the screen right now. This is the NASCAR Heat 5 menu. Do you notice anything wrong here? What I'm showing you right now is the honest-to-God main menu of this game. What you're looking at right now is a menu that's unfinished. So it has the kind of Windows-style Metro interface, which I'm hoping you can see my mouse pointer hover over here. where like there's a box you can click that says start my career. There's a box that says race now, a box that says race modes, a box that says online multiplayer, my driver and my cars, but it's literally unfinished. There isn't like the kind of artwork that's associated with a Metro style interface. They did not even finish the menu for this game. It is just a blank car with the current 2021 schemes on it, in a blank showroom with no background, and just floating text boxes that they didn't even try to finish. This looks like pre-alpha. And yes, we are getting to the 600% raise. So, this is what this company is capable of. Half the staff is from Russia or Australia, have never watched NASCAR in their lives, and when they're handed the NASCAR Heat franchise, which was made by Monster Games and a fully featured, fully finished game, it wasn't, everyone's cup of tea, but it was a solid middle-of-the-road NASCAR title. Somehow this is what Motorsport Games does to it. They have an unfinished UI. How does this make it to the market in 2020? Sorry, I think I said 2021 earlier, but no, this is the summer of 2020. This is ridiculous. Like, this is not finished at all. And they sold this as a retail product. It's insane. Now, this is where it gets weird. This company sponsors fucking everything. See if this works. You guys have seen this, right? Look how often this car or this company appears on the car or on the 78 car for BJ McLeod. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. They constantly sponsor the 78 car of BJ McLeod. It doesn't even make sense why they're doing this. This is a company that's really not making a whole lot of money. They're only selling like one NASCAR game a year. It's about $1 million per weekend to sponsor a NASCAR Cup Series team. And somehow they're just throwing money at BJ McLeod, and they're not the only one they're throwing money at. Because it's more than just NASCAR they throw money at. Suddenly it's, hey, we've got an R Factor 2 livery for Rudy Van Buren. Where is this money coming from? How are they affording to do this? R Factor 2 is not popular. It's a niche racing sim. NASCAR Heat is not popular. Everyone plays iRacing for the NASCAR fix. Like, I'll be the first to admit that. NASCAR Heat is really a game that's sold to high school kids who don't have a gaming PC and they still want to play NASCAR. And somehow Rudy Van Buren has a Porsche Cup car. So, somehow they're affording to sponsor BJ McLeod like every other weekend, right? Trying to find a shot of his current car. I don't want to give these guys clicks, but like, I believe that's it. Shit, where'd that go? Another R Factor 2 car. Like, where is this money coming from? For selling R Factor 2 DLC in a NASCAR Heat game that like a couple thousand people play. It doesn't make sense. And then to drive things even further home, it's not just sim racing they entered. They entered the sim racing publication scene, the content creator scene. Motorsport Games announces Traction, the new online home for racing games and esports. They invented their own website. Race Department already existed. All these content creators in the sim racing sphere already existed. That wasn't enough. They invented their own website and just copied Race Department. There it is. As someone writes in the chat, not to mention the prize money for Le Mans Virtual, etc. It doesn't make sense. And then, like, immediately after Traction starts, like a week later, they're on the side of a NASCAR Cup car. This would be like if Bram starts Race Department in like 2007 or 2008, and the week after it goes live, he's on the side of an F1 car. It doesn't make sense. Where is this money coming from? Yeah, this is real. This ran at Homestead in 2021. Where is this money coming from? From selling NASCAR Heat and R Factor 2 DLC? Are you like where's this money coming from? Let's find out where the money came from. Shareholderforum.com, SHFK Library 2021-02-08. This is where things get fun. 47-page document. We're going to go through this. So, Motorsport Games is being sued. And I've covered this in a very short form in another video, but let's actually read through, because again, there are people on Twitter who still say it's all rumors, it's all speculation. Okay, let's go through this then. HC2 Holdings and Continental General Insurance Company, by their undersigned attorneys, and as far as their complaint against defendants, Motorsport Games Incorporated, Mike Zoy, Jonathan New, and Dmitry Kosko, allege as follows. This is a classic case of a controlling stockholder abusing its fiduciary position to defraud minority investors and snap their shares at a deep discount, only for the controlling stockholder to turn around and immediately realize an enormous profit on the deal. Defendant Motorsport, the controlling stockholder of 704 Games Company, a Delaware corporation, told plaintiffs, the company's minority investors, a false tale of woe and unprofitability, when in fact the company was in the midst of a groundbreaking year of success and profitability, and Motorsport fully expected to realize a bonanza profit when it conducted an initial public offering. You know, in layman's terms, they went live on the stock market. Relying on defendants' false assurances, plaintiffs accepted a paltry $1.2 million in return for their 26.2% share of the company. Mere months later, defendants conducted a spectacularly successful IPO that valued 26% of the company, the percentage share of the company plaintiffs owned before the sale to Motorsport, at a whopping $206 million. That's where the money came from, boys. More than 170 times the amount Motorsport paid plaintiffs for their shares. So their Motorsport Games being sued under sections 10B, 20A, and 20A of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, and for violations of Securities Exchange Commission's Rule 10B-5, codified at 17 CFR, as well as for breach of contract, fraud in the inducement, breach of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment. Again, that's where the money came from, boys. And constructive trust under Delaware law. What a mess. What a mess, what a mess, what a mess. Anyways, this is a long, long thing to read. I will try and skim through it as quick as possible because we have so much more to go through. Again, some content creators have passed this all off as rumors and said they don't want to get into it, and they pretend not to know what they're talking about, and that I don't know what I'm talking about, and it's all speculation. It's right here, boys. Let's go. HC2's investment in NASCAR Games dates back to 2015 when HC2's subsidiary DMI, I believe this is Duesenberry Martin, maybe? I'm not sure. It might be. Acquired certain exclusive rights to build a NASCAR game business. HC2 paid $6 million to acquire a DMI Incorporated business. It might be Duesenberry Martin. I'd have to look into that. Motorsport was formed in 2018 as a holding company and wholly owned subsidiary of Motorsport Network. In August 2018, HC2 and Continental, along with other investors in the company, entered into a stockholders agreement with Motorsport in connection with Motorsport's purchase of 200,000 shares of the company's common stock. Motorsport's acquisition made Motorsport the controlling stockholder of the company, leaving HC2 with 54,000 shares of common stock and Continental with 51,000 shares. So after this transaction, Motorsport owns basically a little over 50% of the company's common stock, and then HC2 and Continental are minority shareholders. As controlling stockholder, Motorsport and its agents, including Mike Zoy, Dmitry Kosko, and Jonathan New, exercise control over the flow of financial and operational information, keyword information, to the plaintiffs. So Motorsport buys up a controlling stake in the company. And this means not only do they essentially control the company's decisions, but they are the judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to providing the other investors who are still on with this whole squad all of the information regarding how successful a company is, whether the company's making money or not each month. Does that make sense to you guys? It should. So the new bosses come in and are like, hey, we're in charge of giving our other investors the financial information, and we can say whatever we want to them. That's not a good recipe at all. Since acquiring control of the company, Motorsport has derived nearly all of its total net revenues from its ownership interest in the company. Motorsport, its controlling owner Mike Zoe, Costco, and Jonathan New owed fiduciary duties to plaintiffs by virtue of Motorsport's position as the controlling majority shareholder. So what I just went over, even though Motorsport Games came in and became the judge, jury, and executioner of 704, and all of their minority investors who own less than 50% of the company, they still had a fiduciary duty not to fuck over the other squads all in this. That's what fiduciary duty is. That, hey, even if you run this company and you have a controlling stake in it, your responsibility is to still kind of be fair to people and not fuck over the other investors. So they didn't. During 2020, defendants misrepresented, the defendants in this case being Motorsport Games, misrepresented and concealed the financial results and prospects of the company, leading plaintiffs, which are the minority shareholders and other minority stockholders, to believe that the company was unprofitable and would require additional investment by plaintiffs. In addition, defendants claimed that there had been a substantial revenue overstatement in 2018 and demanded $1 million in additional cash, or 15% of all other stockholders' equity shares, in consideration for the alleged overstatement. So, as I just mentioned, Motorsport Games having control of the company and full leeway to basically report whatever they wanted to other investors, basically started lying to these investors and saying, hey, this company's massively unprofitable, and just made up their own data. You can't do that. It's not legal. So in June 2020, Motorsport Games approached the minority investors and offered to purchase their shares of the company for a price far below what, upon information and belief, Motorsport Games knew was the fair market value for those shares. So Motorsport Games was cutting all these deals behind the scenes, but not telling that to their investors or the minority investors. It's bad. So defendants controlled the information flow to the minority investors concerning the company's results and prospects. Plaintiffs relied on defendants' statements, including defendants' statements concerning the company's lack of profitability and the need for additional capital contributions in deciding to sell plaintiffs' stock to Motorsport. So they're essentially saying, in straight up terms, Costco, New, and Mike Zoe are all fucking liars. They lied about the state of the company and told them to just dump all their stock immediately. Because the company's going to go under, you're going to get nothing for it. Just sell it to us really, really quickly. Please sell it to us, LOL. And none of it was true. None of it. And as it says in point 17 here, contrary to defendants' misrepresentations that the company was in dire financial straits, the company was actually making a profit. The financial information reported in the Motorsport prospectus, which was based almost exclusively on the financials of 704 Games, indicated a positive of $3,200,000 for the 9 months ended September 30th, 2020. On January 13th, 2021, less than 5 months after acquiring plaintiff shares at a steep discount, defendants and their affiliates held an initial public offering of stock in Motorsport Games on the NASDAQ stock exchange. Defendants had, in fact, been planning the IPO well in advance of their purchase of plaintiff shares. So in January of 2020, Motorsport entered into an employment agreement with Costco that contemplated a lucrative IPO. In preparation for the IPO and prior to their acquisition of plaintiff shares, defendants signed a confidential promotional services agreement with Fernando Alonso Diaz. We know him as Fernando Alonso, a prominent Formula One race car driver, and were negotiating to obtain exclusive licenses to develop multi-platform games for Automobile Club de l'Ouest, which is ACO, including games based on the FIA World Endurance Championship and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The first confidential filing in support of the IPO was made mere weeks after defendants purchased plaintiff shares in the company. The IPO was initially priced at $20 per share, but traded much higher, reaching $38 per share during initial trading on January 13th, 2021. Based upon the peak trading price, the implied value of the company is approximately $786 million. Company's worth close to $1 billion, and has, at this point in time, when this lawsuit was filed, had not put out a game yet. What is happening here, boys? The 20% share of the company that Motorsports acquired from plaintiffs for $1.2 million is actually worth at least $200 million. What the fuck? What the actual fuck? It's crazy. So there's a lot of filler material in this. There's factual allegations. So we'll skip to the defendant's duties to plaintiff parts. In connection with Motorsport's acquisition of approximately 53% of the company's shares, Motorsport and the minority stockholders of the company entered into the stockholders' agreement, which specified certain rights of the stockholders vis-a-vis the company and each other. The company, Motorsport Games, was obligated to provide plaintiffs and the other minority stockholders with quarterly unaudited and annual audited financial statements of the company. Well, that's pretty normal. All such financial statements were to be prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting practices. As controlling majority stockholder of the company, Motorsport Games and its agents owed fiduciary duties to the company and its minority stockholders, including duties of care, loyalty, and disclosure. The one thing you'll learn about reading through this document, it's really not difficult to understand what's going on. You don't have to be a lawyer to know what's being said here, right? A lot of the content creators who have shied away from stuff like this because they think it's too complicated, it's really not. It's all explained pretty well. So, defendants' material misrepresentations and omissions. Defendants, of course, being Motorsport Games. Defendants systematically removed representatives of the minority stockholders from positions of influence within the company and failed to provide information and financial reporting to the minority stockholders as required by stockholders' agreements. Not good. Then they talk about some people stepping down. It's not ideal. So then we skip ahead to defendants set the stage of the company's November 2019 Board of Directors meeting. So, November 12, 2019, the company held a special meeting of its board of directors, of which HC2 Holdings director Wayne Barr Jr. was a member via Zoom. Costco chaired the meeting, and HC2 employee AJ Stahl attended the meeting on behalf of plaintiff HC2's minority stockholder with observer rights. At that meeting, and this is where it starts. At that meeting, the financial review of the company indicated a $5 million reduction in revenue from the prior forecast and a reduction in earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, a common measure of cash flow, from projected $1.3 million to negative $1.6 million, portraying the company as a money-losing entity that was likely to require additional capital infusions from investors with little hope of profitability. So, Motorsport Games basically fed them bullshit documents saying, hey, we're losing a ton of money, but we're actually not. The dire predictions for Motorsport Games were a significant departure from prior expectations for a company whose shares Motorsport Games had just acquired for $50 per share just 2 years earlier. So this alone, and I think Upper Echelon Gaming pointed this out, hey, why did they even buy this company if it was running at a loss? Stuff is already not adding up, and we're really not that far into this document. But this right here is essentially saying that Motorsport Games saw value in this company, saw them as profitable, snatched them up because of that reason, and then turned around and said, actually, no, your company's losing money, and here's all this documentation that says you're losing money and you're worthless. Why would they buy them then? Why would they invest all this money into buying a controlling stake in the company if the company was losing money? So already shit doesn't add up. Motorsport Games reports and projections portrayed the company, which at this point they're referring to 704, as a weak enterprise whose fair market value had suffered during Motorsport's 10 years as a controlling majority stockholder. It's just so fucked up. In fact, upon information and belief, defendants believe the company's results were promising and would yield an attractive valuation IPO. This belief culminated in the execution of a January 1st, 2020 employment agreement between Motorsport and Dmitry Costco, which is the Costco Employment Agreement, a copy of which is attached here to as Exhibit 3, targeting a company valuation of at least $100 million, ranging all the way up to beyond $1 billion. This company had not put out a game yet of their own accord. They were just slapping their names on other games that had existed, like in R Factor 2's case, for almost a decade at this point. And yet they were genuinely preparing for the company to be valued at $1 billion. How? It's nonsensical. So there's some exchanging of documents here. Upon information and belief, the 2020 consolidated budget prepared and provided by Motorsport Games was not accurate and included material misstatements and omissions, including In particular, defendants estimate that the company would generate a loss in 2020. In fact, the company reported a positive gain in the millions for 2020 in connection with the IPO. Upon information and belief, the consolidated budget for 2020 was not merely a poor prediction, but was a material misstatement of defendants' true knowledge and expectations concerning the company's performance in 2020, which significantly altered the total mix of info available to the plaintiffs in deciding to sell their shares. Because the plaintiffs, again, the minority investors, were wondering, hey, like, should we sell our shares in this company because you just told us we're failing, but we absolutely wouldn't have sold our shares if the company is successful, and you're lying to us, and it's fucked. It's really, really fucked. So plaintiffs have formed this belief that the reason they realized they were lied to, this is where in the document it explains how these minority investors figured out they were lied to. Immediately after providing these misleading budgets that showed the company was operating at a loss, Motorsport entered into the Costco employment agreement, the effective date of which was contemporaneous with the defendant's representations to minority investors that the company was losing over $3 million per year. So they're like, why are you entering all these agreements with our new CEO to prepare for an IPO and that our company is going to be valued at $1 billion when you just held a meeting in the winter time saying that the company was losing money and our shares are going to be lower? It's like, why are you doing this? Everyone in point 70 is just super fucking confused. And so this is where we find out why this entire saga exists. This right here. The Costco employment agreement provided for incentive compensation to Costco in the event of an IPO that valued Motorsport at least $100 million and contained additional equity awards for Costco, starting at a market capitalization of $150 million, ranging all the way up to a valuation of $1 billion. Metrics that are irreconcilable with defendants' inaccurate portrayal of the company at the company's November 2019 board of directors meeting and in the 2020 consolidated budget. This is why Motorsport Games exists right here. This is why this whole company operates. It was so when the company went public on the stock market, Dmitry Costco got paid. The end. So I'll let that sink into you. This is why this company exists. It's not to make good NASCAR games. It's so they could go public on the stock market and Dmitry could get paid. It's right there. But it just continues to get worse. So on January 1st, 2020, immediately after the board meeting and the consolidated budget that painted the company as operating at a loss, Motorsport and Costco agreed to this new Costco employment agreement, which targeted a company value of at least $100 million in an IPO or other valuation event, and rewarded Costco with an additional compensation value at increments all the way up to $1 billion. So, like, the reason it was so well thought out regarding the company's valuation was because, like, this was the whole plan. Oh, and the Motorsport Games conveniently didn't tell the plaintiffs or the minority investors about the new Costco employment agreement or its valuation targets to the minority investors, which is kind of a critical omission of important information that further altered the mix of info available to plaintiffs. Plaintiffs first learned of the valuation terms of the Costco employment agreement after selling their shares, when Motorsport attached the text of the Costco employment agreement to the public SEC filings. Lol. This shit is so funny. This is more fun than playing NASCAR 21. Just reading, like, the levels of just deceit that are contained in this document. I mean, like, just reading it, it's like, this is like a textbook, like, play of, like, how to screw over your investors. Like, it's just everything. It's very educational. So we move on to point 75 again. I'm trying to skip as much as I can, because this is going to be a long video anyway. Despite portraying the company as a money-losing entity in early 2020, defendants secretly lined up financing to fund additional acquisition activity. So okay, the company's losing money. How are you gaining lines of credit to buy new things? What's happening here? Doesn't make sense. On April 1st, 2020, Motorsport entered into a promissory note with Motorsport's parent company, Motorsport Network, providing for a $10 million line of credit payable on demand to fund working capital, operations, acquisitions, investments, or any other purposes of Motorsport. Upon information and belief, the April 2020 note was made available and intended to fund the acquisition of minority investors' holdings in the company. The 2020 note also provided by Motorsport Network with a way to immediately profit off Motorsport's IPO by calling in the April 2020 note, which would be immediately due and payable on demand, and deeming pre-IPO investments to be advances under the note. Defendants did not disclose the April 2020 note or the fact that they had secured a $10 million line of credit to fund investments and acquisitions to the plaintiffs. Yet another omission of important information altering the total mix of info made available to plaintiffs in deciding to sell their shares. So once Motorsport Games take over, they're just like, let's tell all of our other investors bogus information and just hide everything we can from them. So then Motorsport Games, from what I understand, skimming through this, the 2019 quarterly financial show quarterly results for company in 2018 and 2019 and the variance year over year. These figures indicated that losses increased by 684% in 2019 compared to such losses in 2018. So Motorsport Games is continuing to feed them bullshit that the company is losing money, but they're not. And then Motorsport Games' presentation at the company's 2020 Board of Directors meeting falsely indicates a multi-million-dollar cash shortfall even if the company achieved all its goals. Continue over and over again to say the company's losing money, but they're not. Like, they're really not, and it doesn't make sense. And as it's kind of summarized right here, upon information and belief, the June 2020 BOD presentation was not accurate and included material misstatements and omissions of material facts regarding the financial condition of the company and the prospects for the finances of the company going forward, including in particular the repeated indications of a cash shortfall even if the company achieved all the goals set forth in the June 2020 BOD presentation. And basically, you'll see this sentence used over and over again. This persuaded plaintiffs to try and sell their shares in the company when they didn't need to. The company was fine. They were being lied to. And then Motorsport Games started to pressure their minority investors to agree to a sale by demanding cash or equity to cure an alleged financial misstatement. And this is, I think they just straight up call it extortion here. Yeah. Defendants also failed to disclose that via the April 2020 note, Motorsport Network had recently agreed to extend additional credit to Motorsport rather than require the cash payment suggested by New. So Motorsport Games starts demanding their minority investors for just a bunch of money randomly, even though the company's not losing money. It's just getting weird and as they say in here, extortionate. Defendants' extortionate demand highlighted defendants' failure to disclose material information to the minority investors. In response to Jonathan New's demand, Mr. Stahl specifically requested backup and cites the GAAP supporting of a restatement of financials. And they go on and yell about it and be like, what the fuck's going on here? Why are they begging for money? Upon information and belief, New's representation that a revenue overstatement necessitated consent from plaintiffs to Motorsport Network withdrawing $1.1 million from the company's accounts, or plaintiffs to contribute additional equity to Motorsport's constituted material misstatements, and entailed omissions of material facts regarding the financial conditions of the company, as no such consent or contribution was required. They didn't need the money. They just started begging them for money randomly, and essentially going through the motions and trying to sell them on the idea that the company was losing money. This whole thing is just a show. And they continue with the show. Defendants falsely claim, again, Motorsport Games falsely claim the company would soon require a capital call. But apparently they didn't. They didn't need that money. It was just a show to fool investors. Then we get to defendants continue to conceal material information and opportunities from plaintiffs. So in the midst of negotiations to acquire plaintiff stock at a bargain basement valuation, Motorsport Games continued to prepare for a lucrative IPO and diverted corporate opportunities to their own benefit. So again, they're going through the motions trying to pretend the company is losing money. It's going to be worthless. They don't have any deals going on, but they actually do. And this is one of them. So on July 20th, 2020, less than 1 month before Motorsport acquired the plaintiff's shares, Motorsport entered into a confidential promotional services agreement with Fernando Alonso Diaz, a prominent Formula One race car driver. The Alonso Agreement. The Alonso Agreement provided that Alonso would not provide services until Motorsport had consummated an IPO, and that Alonso's compensation would take the form of a grant of 3% of the company's issued and outstanding Class A stock as of the effective date of the IPO. So they basically gave Alonso shares in the company, so he's participating in what's probably a stock scheme too. That's exactly what I'm insinuating, and that's what this seems to insinuate here too. I don't think I'm reading that wrong. They just gave the guy stock. By entering into the Alonso Agreement, defendants had both A. commandeered a business opportunity belonging to the company for their own benefit, and B. ensured that plaintiffs would not realize any benefit from the Alonso relationship prior to or as part of their stock sale to Motorsport. Motorsport Games did not disclose the Alonso Agreement to the minority investors prior to acquiring plaintiff's stock. In fact, the Alonso Agreement contained a strict confidentiality provision providing for legal remedies against Alonso. They'd sue him if he were to actually talk about this existing. So, to further play the role or play the part that Motorsport Games and 704 Games were just losing a shit ton of money and the company wasn't profitable, not only were they feeding minority investors bullshit metrics and pretending to ask for money when they didn't need to sell that the company was losing money, to put on an act, they were actually doing quite well and engaging in all these business opportunities and partnering with Fernando Alonso, but putting him under a gag order so he couldn't talk about it. This, as you can imagine, is very, very sketchy and not good. You don't have to be a legal expert to figure out what's going on here. This is fucked up. And it says that right here. The existence of the Alonso Agreement, a high-profile promotional agreement with a world-famous race car driver, was squarely contrary to the image of a struggling company that defendants were portraying to the plaintiffs. And they argue that, hey, if the plaintiffs knew that we'd partnered with fucking Fernando Alonso of all people, we wouldn't have sold our stock. Like shit, if I had stock in a company that just got endorsed by Fernando Alonso, I wouldn't sell it either. Why would you? This is completely ridiculous. They're hiding lucrative business deals from, their minority shareholders, basically to just inflate the value of the company and get rich when it hit the IPO. And then it just keeps going. Oh yeah, we also partnered with Le Mans too. And that's essentially what this whole page of this document is that they partnered with Le Mans and started acquiring more and more partnerships that they never told other investors about. Scrolling ahead. So eventually they do convince all minority shareholders to sell off their stock. And then, of course, they make a shit ton of money off of it. The wildly successful results of Motorsport's January 13th, 2021 IPO speak for themselves and belie defendants' prior representations about the company to plaintiffs in inducing plaintiffs to sell their company's stock. At the $20 per share IPO price, multiplied by the 17 million authorized shares, the implied value of Motorsport would be approximately $340 million. At the $38 peak trading price on January 13th, 2021, the implied value of Motorsport Games is approximately $646 million. The implied value of the company, based on the fact that Motorsport's profitability is based upon its 82.2% ownership of the company, is approximately $414 million based on the IPO price, or $786 million based on the peak trading price on January 13th, 2021. These people are big mad. Defendants fraudulently induced plaintiffs to accept just $1.2 million for their 26% stake in the company, but at the peak trading price on Motorsport's first day of trading, that stake is actually worth at least $206 million. They screwed investors out of $206 million. That's all it is. That's all this is. Oh, we're not done with lawsuits, though. There's another one. So, while this lawsuit is occurring, and all this shit is happening, Motorsport Games is signing a binding term sheet to acquire mobile developer Digital Tales USA and its upcoming new Superbike official mobile game franchise. So, Motorsport Games have 4 licenses they parade around: NASCAR, BTCC, IndyCar, and the World Endurance Championship. Right? Well, there's supposed to be a 5th, World Superbike. So this is early 2021. They're like, hey, we're going to try and acquire this developer that's working on a Superbike game. Why haven't we seen anything about that? Well, because they got sued again. So instead of just linking to the page, and this is actually quite timely, this Project Racing guy has shown up in the chat saying, oh, it's all speculation. What's Austin's job right now? He's a loser, that sort of thing. Let's go find the other lawsuit. Miami-Dade County Clerk of Courts. Here we go. Again, apparently no other racing game website or content creator knew how to do this. So that's great. Motorsport. No. Wrong button. Quick online search. Have a case or citation you want to look up? Sure. It's not a valid case number. Fuck you. Civil. Search for cases. Sorry, I haven't had to use this website in a while. Standard search, but this is how I found it all. It's really easy. I'm not a robot. Just remember, guys, this is all rumors and speculation. Here we go. Elida, I think that's how you say it, SRL, and a couple of others versus Motorsport Games. Let's go. So what happened to the Superbike game that they announced in March of 2021? Well, this is why it didn't happen. This is an action for damages in excess of $30,000. Plaintiff Elida, so again, not 704, this is a different company now, hereby sues defendants Motorsport Games and Dmitry Kosko, the defendants. Elida states, they're just outlining who people are at the start. Digital Tales is a developer of innovative gaming experiences across a wide number of platforms through its proprietary framework and third-party engines. How do I backspace this and say Digital Tales is a video game developer? The gaming experiences are available to users on various devices, including portable gaming devices, tablets, smartphones, PCs, and consoles. Motorsport is a developer of racing games and a competitor of Digital Tales. In or about early March 2021, Motorsport contacted Elida to propose a purchase by Motorsport of all of Elida's ownership interest in Digital Tales. So this whole thing that we just saw, let me go back to it here. Sorry, I'm kind of doing this old school. You'd be impressed of how I'm getting along with it. This whole idea of, hey, like we're gonna sign a binding term sheet to acquire this mobile game developer and make a Superbike game. That's what they're talking about here. Based upon the discussions, Elida and Motorsport entered into a binding term sheet. The term sheet, with an effective date of March 12, 2021. A copy of the term sheet is attached hereto as Exhibit A. So as set forth in the term sheet, Upon satisfaction of the conditions set forth in the term sheet and execution of a share purchase agreement, Motorsport was to purchase Ellida's shares in Digital Tales for a price of $2.2 million. Prior to the execution of the term sheet, Costco convinced Ellida to terminate its pending negotiations with a venture capital firm seeking to invest in Digital Tales via a purchase of a percentage of Ellida's ownership interest. So Motorsport Games comes along and says, hey, you want to make the Superbike game? Like, great. Like, we'll buy you up. We'll add a 5th racing game to our portfolio. It'll be a lot of fun, but just stop talking to anyone else you're talking to regarding, like, investments. Just let us be your main guys. And Ellida's like, okay, like, that sounds fair. Like, it makes sense you'd want a Superbike game alongside your 4 other, like, major licenses, right? I am reading the chat, guys. I'm just letting you fight it out in the comments because it seems like you're having fun with it, but I'll just keep going here. So, specifically, prior to the execution of the term sheet, defendants falsely represented to Ellida that if Ellida terminated its pending negotiations with the venture capital firm, Motorsport would negotiate the transaction in good faith, and the transaction would be more beneficial to Ellida than the pending transaction with the venture capital firm. So again, layman's terms, Motorsport Games shows up, says, hey, cancel all your deals with everyone else. We'll buy you. Just give us a bit of time to get the money together for it. And then you can be like our 5th developer and you'll make our Superbike game and we'll all be one happy family under the Motorsport Games banner, right? So, based upon the false representations by defendants, Motorsport Games, Ellida ceased pursuing the pending transaction with the venture capital firm and agreed to instead enter into the term sheet, which is this term sheet. Unbeknownst to Ellida at the time, however, Motorsport Games didn't actually intend to negotiate the transaction in good faith, and only intended to make sure Digital Tales was no longer a threat to Motorsport Games. What the fuck? Consistent with the goal of defrauding Ellida and diluting the value of Digital Tales, once Ellida's pending term sheet with a venture capital firm was terminated, Motorsport required Ellida, as a condition of the transaction, to agree to exclusivity in favor of Motorsport with respect to Ellida's shares in Digital Tales. Specifically, while the term sheet was in effect, Ellida was not permitted to directly or indirectly solicit, initiate, or encourage the submission of, or respond to, or any expression of interest, inquiry, proposal, or offer from any person or entity relating to the acquisition of any material part of the capital stock assets of Digital Tales, or the merger, joint venture, exclusive license, liquidation, and recapitalization, reorganization, or any similar transaction involving Digital Tales or its assets. Term sheet at Section V. Defendant's sole purpose in requiring exclusivity from Ellida was to lock up Ellida and Digital Tales for an extended period of time, such that Motorsport Games could gain an unfair competitive advantage in the market. So this announcement they made saying, like, hey, we're going to try and buy this company, they didn't actually want to buy the company. This was all smoke and mirrors. They had no intention of doing this. It's fucked up. As part of the foregoing scheme, Motorsport Games requested Ellida to extend the transaction deadline in the term sheet from June 30th to September 30th. Ellida, acting in good faith, unaware of defendant's ongoing scheme to defraud, agreed to the extension. So what Motorsport Games had in the term sheet originally was they're like, hey, we're probably going to buy you like middle of June to the end of June. And Ellida's like, okay, like our company can stay afloat and pay our employees and, remain operational for a couple months. So like, whatever, it's not a big deal. And then Motorsport comes and is like, hey, we can't buy you just yet. We don't have the money. Can we extend things till September? And Ellida's like, okay. But obviously this is a problem because Motorsport Games is just dicking them around at this point. Right? That's all this is. This is, we are dicking you around until September 30th. Pursuant to the term sheet, Motorsport required Ellida to establish and maintain at Ellida's expense a virtual data room with info and documentation regarding Digital Tales operations and assets, including but not limited to technical IP, financial, accounting, and tax, and legal information. And Ellida's like, yeah, that seems reasonable. You'd want to know like how Digital Tales operates. I'm like, that's fine. So on September 1st, 2021, Motorsport sent Elida what Motorsport represented was the final version of the SPA and scheduled a closing of the transaction for September 8th, 2021 at Motorsport's office. So they're like, okay, we actually have the money. We're going to buy the company on September 8th. Does that make sense? That's how I read into it. However, a day before this happens, and everyone's all excited to sell off the company and make a bunch of money and start making superbikes under the Motorsport Games banner, on September 7th, 2021, Motorsport suddenly and without any justification canceled the scheduled closing of the transaction, and on September 8th, 2021, advised Elida that Motorsport was just canceling it, and it's over. Lel. One day before they're like, we're gonna buy your company, they just come out and they're like, yeah, we're not going to. Sorry. In light of the time and expense incurred between March and September 2021 in connection with its compliance with the due diligence and other obligations of their term sheet, Digital Tales were unable to undertake new projects for Digital Tales or otherwise build the business. So basically, the company stopped operating, anticipating a buyout. Didn't happen. Unbeknownst to Elida, this is where it gets bad. It was always Motorsport Games' scheme to tie Elida and Digital Tales up for a sufficient period of time in a fraudulent transaction, such that Digital Tales would eventually be unable to compete with Motorsport because of an inability to fund operations, develop new projects, and or support the development of ongoing projects such as SBK, which us sim racers know is just the Superbike game. This is so fucked up. They faked buying a company until the very last minute just to basically burn through all the company's cash so the rival company would sink themselves and free up the Superbike license. As direct and proximate result of defendant's wrongful conduct, Elida has suffered significant damages in an amount to be determined at trial. All conditions precedent to the filing of this action have been performed, satisfied, excused, or waived. Holy shit. Like, this in my opinion is almost worse than the first lawsuit we went through, because the first lawsuit's like Costco and New and Mike Soy are just fucking investors. And like, this happens in the business world. It's not right. It's very obviously not right. But this is a little company building a Superbike game who like didn't want to be in this mess. They were just going to make a Superbike game, and that's what they were doing in 2021. This other company came along and promised them that, hey, we're actually going to buy you out. We can offer more sales. We can offer a bigger marketing budget. We can put your game on the map, and we'll all be under the Motorsports Game banner, and it'll be really, really cool. And the company said, okay, we will adhere to your request to just stop working. And we'll just wait it out until the deal's finalized, and then we'll pick up back work. And then it turns out that that entire proposal was bullshit just to sink the company. The company stopped working, lost all their money. It reads in this lawsuit like they went under, and Motorsport Games basically just laughed at them. It's like, it's fucked up because like there are people that work for this company and are now like, oh my god, this Superbike project we were working on, like, we don't know if it's going to come out. Like, we don't know if our company's going to be around anymore. They had, and the worst part is, it wasn't like informal talks, you know, over the phone or through email being like, hey, we kind of want to buy your company, we like what you're doing. It's like, no, they signed like a binding agreement being like, yes, we're going to buy the company by the state. And then they amended it saying, well, actually, we need a bit more time, so we'll buy it in September instead of June. And then the last day they backed out and just cut and ran. Again, it's not like an informal agreement that they had over the phone. It's like they had a contract. They even announced their own contract here, you know, that this was going to happen, and then they just cut and ran from it. They cut and ran from their own business deal they announced. It's not good. So those are like two lawsuits, and of course, the really funny part about this Alonso agreement mentioned earlier, right? Everyone was all like, wow, this is a really big deal. Like, Fernando Alonso came on, you know, as an investor and a board of director member for Motorsport Games, Everyone was kind of like excited about that back in the day because it showed Fernando, was taking sim racing seriously. Well, like he was just a pawn in their game. Yep, that's what I'm insinuating because like that's how it's spelled out in the complaint documents. That this F1 star that we all really respect was just a pawn in like what appears to be a financial scheme. Yeah, I remember when this news came out, and it's like, wow, like they really got. Let me go find this here. Alonso invests in motorsport games. Like it's just all over the place. And he was just a pawn. It's just sad. So all this time, this company is actually building a game, right? All this time, this company is building a game, straight up. Like they're trying to deal with these lawsuits and this kind of unsatisfactory vibe hanging around the company. What did the game actually look like? Their first game, NASCAR 21 Ignition. What do you think it looked like? Well, it was a disaster. So, stuff not included in this video. I'm going to have to like zoom in here just a bit. Sorry, boys. Like I said, I'm doing this the old-fashioned way. There's no stage racing, at least when it launched. So you can't remap the controls. Corner cutting penalties are broken. You can't use your paint booth cars online. Name and rookie stripes aren't put on your car in career mode. Lap count isn't shown in the menu. You have to physically go to the track before it's listed. And then this. And I'll just let this video play because the video speaks for itself. All while these lawsuits are happening and the company is, not so subtly being outlined as this massive financial scheme, it shows in the product. It does. So this is my video, not stealing from anyone. There's crashing issues. You trying to run a race at Bristol Dirt when the game first shipped, it just like locked up on people. And it's just a fuck. Like people can't even race at one of the tracks when the game launches. The AI cars, not only is there weird shit happening in pit road, the restarts of the race of like the game are broken. Like something is wrong here. Like cars are spawning all over the place. Steering assist, you couldn't turn it off when the game first launched. Multiple content creators. Again, I muted the volume here, but it's not hard to see what they're saying, what they're talking about, and the subtitles help a bit. You can't turn off steering assist. They finally added a patch for it, a couple weeks later. But like this shipped like this, straight up. And there's tons of videos out there like this. Like guys took my concept of just like a glitch montage and they just made their own. Like that's perfectly fine because like this game kind of deserved it. So like Jeff Favignano was trying to do like a opening night kind of video on it, and he's like, I can't turn off the steering assist. And Real Radman, when he did his opening videos on this game, he's like, honestly, I can't judge the physics because the steering assist is so intrusive even on low that he's like, I don't even know how the car handles, like straight up. There's no car setups. This is built on a game engine that is known for like intricate car setup menus, and there's nothing. You can't drive out of the pit lane. Your car just spawns on the track. In R Factor, when you click drive, you spawn your pit stall and you have to shift up into first and then drive out of pit road. Right when the race starts, the AI warps towards the player. And I think there's just so much that happens in this video. And like people found more, of course. There was the damage model not always working, so like Radman just drives straight onto a wall at Vegas. There's nothing on the front end. There's no rear view mirror in the game. You get half of one in cockpit view. The AI would brake check on some tracks at the start-finish line, which is a common issue in poorly modded R-Factor tracks. And then Favignano ran into a really bizarre issue where all the cars on the track despawned. This is real. It's in one of his videos. And then I think the car spawns in the garage here. Yep. So like he's not supposed to be here. And the game spawned him in the garage. It's so fucked up. And then the race at Phoenix, I have the subtitle "Too Much Weird Shit to Summarize." First of all, look at the restarts here. Instead of the cars being nicely bunched up in 2x2 fashion, there's a giant like hole in the middle between the lines. He doesn't know when the game is going to give him control of his car, which is a pretty big problem. Most NASCAR games have a countdown like 3, 2, 1, prepare to drive. Then the car yeets hard left at the start-finish line. And then he gets turned by the AI cars, rolls the car, and there's no yellow. Like, the flags didn't even work in this game. And then, of course, the typical ISI stuff. Train track AI, where all the AI run the same line. Bouncing AI cars, which are the R Factor 2 issues we just talked about with the binary gas and brake inputs. Pit stops would like warp the car to the center of pit lane after they were done. It didn't gracefully transition out of the box. No trucks, no Xfinity Series, no custom lobbies. It was like $100 for the Champions Edition and all the DLC. Guys, it was a mess. So while they were facing all these lawsuits and buying up all these companies and hiring a bunch of Russians and Australians to work on the game, this was the result of like 2 or 3 years of having infinite money to work on the game after launching as an IPO. It was just a disaster. Sorry, Dan. Yeah, I guess I should have texted you. I didn't know if you're home from work or not. So, this whole thing is a fuck. And it's not just a fuck in my eyes. But let's go to the Steam charts. Wait. NASCAR Ignition on Steam. What the fuck is happening here, guys? You seeing this? 21 Ignition on Steam. 5 out of 5 stars. 278 ratings. You're seeing this, right? Something is not right there. Because when I click NASCAR 21 Ignition on Steam, it says mostly negative. That's not right. I think I found a problem. Are they fucking with like the Google results now? It's literally showing the wrong price. But long story short, people buy this game and they're like, this is a fucking disaster. The average review is not 5 out of 5 stars from 278 people. It's actually mostly negative from 312 people. Where is this metric being pulled from? Like, this is new. I haven't seen this before. So long story short, the game has tanked. The company is an embarrassment, but we're not done yet. Let's go to their first investor call after the launch of the game. So this is from The Motley Fool, which what this does is it listens to the investor call and it uses AI software to transcribe what everybody says. Oh, you're on Bing. That was Bing. Good catch. Bing, bing, bing. Yeah, I got you. So the Motley Fool transcribes their investor calls. They put it all in text format here, which is really, really handy because instead of having to listen to it, we can just scroll through the text. So, after a mostly negative review sentiment and like, as we'll see, like 30 people playing the game worldwide, we shared our passion and have been capturing community feedback. We're actively working on addressing this feedback received from our community and bolster Outer Next and the Hedges Life soon that addresses the quality of life and new features requests. Again, the AI is not perfect, but you can kind of tell what it's trying to say. We are pleased with all the passionate feedback pouring in across all of our social channels, and particularly we stay transparent with our community and partners, and most importantly, showcase that we deliver on our promises and that we truly care. Shortly after the launch and implementation of the patches, it says practice, but it's patches, for our platforms, we saw positive community sentiment and appreciation. What are you talking about? Mostly negative. Recent reviews. "38% of the 18 user reviews in the last 30 days are positive. 26% of the 312 user reviews for this game are positive." Dimitri, what the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? I mean, this is... If you're an investor in this call, you stand up and be like, dude, you're lying. Like, straight up. Like, you are completely out of touch with what's actually happened here. Positive community sentiment and appreciation. You're lying. In fact, who is even playing this game? "15 people. Live. This is live. 15 people worldwide are playing NASCAR Ignition on the PC. Positive community sentiment, and nobody's playing your game. If you have positive sentiment, wouldn't more people be playing your game? Here, let's do something really funny. NASCAR Heat 5 has 200 players playing right now, compared to 15 for the new game. Positive reviews. DR3D1, you called it. "I now want to read the positive reviews because they sound hilarious." I like your style. Let's go. Let's read this positive sentiment. How much do you want to bet it's bots? How much do you want to bet it's bots? Helpful. Oh, this is a positive review. "Please remove the game from the store. Put it in a vault and incinerate it." Positive review. "Honestly, the game in its current state is not worth buying." Positive review. "Recommended. Too expensive for anyone's liking. Needs all this stuff." Positive review. And then just a ton of not recommended. So even the positive reviews are negative. Yeah, let's read the positive stuff. DC. Positive. What does this mean? Recommended if you can buy this game for $13. It's actually full of bugs, though. Positive review. "I like this game, bugs aside. If they fix this game could be so good." Positive review. So he's basically reviewing on a fantasy of what this game is like in his head. Positive review. "Game was pretty bad at the start, but the devs already fixed a ton of crap wrong with it." No, they didn't. "Literally all the bugs, divide that by 5 and that's what's left." No, they didn't. "One major thing is cautions. That's kind of an integral part of racing, so the cautions are still broken." Positive review. But major parts of the game are broken. "Give them a few months to get the bugs worked out, and we have something." Positive review. Again, that's not true. Like, what is the game like now? So, again, another person reviewing based on a fantasy they made up in their head. The positive reviews are negative. Like, yeah, Dan's right. I'm dead. Like, what does this is my favorite, just DC. Like, that's all he typed. Positive review. Like, I don't. That's not what does he call it here? Positive community sentiment and appreciation. DC. Just incredible. Let's do recent reviews. How do I do this? Recent. "Even though people hate it, it isn't bad. Motorsport games just want to make it hard. If you don't want it very hard, then I recommend NASCAR Heat 5. NASCAR 21 is very realistic. It has so many things to do, and the tracks are just the best. So for pro gamers, I recommend this. This guy was paid to write this. This is ridiculous. This game has some bugs, but overall it's a fun game. Yeah, okay. Amazing game, 10 out of 10. Astro Claps, 7 products and account. So what does this guy actually play on Steam? I like going into this level of detail. His reviews are good. Good. That has to be a bot. Straight up. Sorry, I think I borked the Steam reviews here. Okay, review type positive. Display as recent. This game slaps. Would definitely buy again. What have you had to say about other games? Love buying AEW 2K22. EA poop this game. Like, the positive sentiment is coming from like 12-year-olds. Here's a great one. This guy's really detailed. HGH, JBVQ, JBBBBB, HBHBH, HEIK, WQN, WQN, IUJN, QK, IJ, EKIE, IWQ, JIEQ, JKH, JW, WIU, JWHKJ. I thoroughly agree. Oh, I'm not logged in. This guy actually did a really good job with his review. It's the only review he's ever left. 3 people found this helpful. I tried to be the 4th. What does he actually play? Well, it doesn't show. It's fun. From Chase Elliott fan 291, who definitely isn't 12. Sure, it's good, I guess. Is this a real person? Good. Good. Cool. Neat. Nice. Good. Yes. Game of the year. Okay. These people are definitely real. It's good, especially with the next-gen schemes and Season Pass. This is a lie. There's no next-gen schemes in this game. There's a test mode with 1 car. Praising something not in the game. Positive review. It's a fake review. Anyway. So, after this positive sentiment, what's Motorsport Games' next play? We've got some ambitious plans around Ultimate Team concepts, probably related to the NASCAR franchise, because we think there's a great opportunity there. Yes, because this is what everybody wants in their broken NASCAR game. Ultimate Team. You know, this Ultimate Team. A mode described as controversial. This is what we want in our NASCAR game, right, boys? Yeah, I don't think so. Anyway, let's go to the Q4 investor call. Our 2021-2022 24 hours Le Mans Virtual Series has been enjoyed by more than 81 million fans across digital and linear channels. I don't think 81 million people are watching this. $99 million people watched this year's Super Bowl. R Factor 2 is they're trying to say had almost as many people as the Super Bowl. I am definitely sure this game with 414 people playing right now has 81 million fans and is on par with the Super Bowl. Definitely sure. This is totally not a lie at all. Oh, but here's the problem. We do not believe, Motorsport Games do not believe our existing cash on hand will be sufficient to fund our operations for the next 12 months. At this time, we're not providing forward guidance. So they have this wildly successful R Factor 2 championship that's almost as popular as the Super Bowl, but the company is actually bleeding money. They've somehow got 800 or 81 million people to watch a game 414 people are playing right now. But they are still so woefully inept at running the company that they're actually going to run out of money within the next couple of months. This is retarded. What is happening here? But remember, this is all just speculation, right? Bizarre. So, do you think this is actually, filtering its way out to sites like Glassdoor? Let's check. Can I see all 3 reviews? Fuck you. That really doesn't want me to look there. 2.6 out of 5. Why are these ratings different? Something is not right. Okay, let's try the, let's see if Internet Archive works. So as you can see, something is very amiss here. Just a bit. Page is not available on the web. 2 reviews left anonymously, but yeah. So anyway, back to our main point, like, they're just saying crazy shit in their investor calls that, like, doesn't even make sense. You have a product that apparently 81 million people are fans of, but you have still mismanaged this into oblivion and don't have enough money for the rest of the year. I mean, you're apparently putting on a television product that, like, is almost as popular as the Super Bowl, which is a really big deal. So, like, wouldn't you be selling, like, crazy amounts of ad space for, like, a crazy amount of money? That's the first question I'd ask, right? If I'm an investor and I'm sitting in this conference call, I'm like, hey, like, you are almost as popular as the Super Bowl. Like, if you combine the NHL Stanley Cup Finals, the NBA Finals, and, like, a couple of high-profile tennis and golf events, you are beating all of those combined. But yet you're running out of money. Are you not selling ad space? Like, what's happening here? How are you losing money? Well, I'll show you. We're down to 81 cents a share, boys. In fact, throughout the entire company's history, it has just been one long slide of gross mismanagement from $35 a share all the way down to Ignition's release, which came out in October, late October, so I think that was the 28th, down to $12 a share when the game launched. So their share price was already 30% of what it used to be when the game came out, which you'd think would inflate the company's value. And from 21 Ignition's release to now, we are now down to 81 cents a share. Dan, I will send you $1,000 and you can buy stock in this for me. It's just silly. And if this wasn't enough, let's go into their statistics. There's a really interesting piece of info that Bram found. I forget which one it is. Historical data. Shares traded volume hovers around between, like, a max of 100,000 and, like, as low as, like, 10,000. That's pretty normal, right? Suddenly, on March 31st, 2022, 1.1 million shares are traded. What's going on here? I mean, this is so abnormal compared to like the other amounts of shares that are traded, like a couple thousand, to like a max of 100,000. Suddenly, oh, what the fuck happened here? A million shares? Over a million shares? And then it tapers off again. It goes back to normal. What is happening here, boys? Silly. So the company is just like cratering. They're delusional, they're lying to their investors, they're getting sued on multiple fronts. But as John Thiering writes, a great example of our culture and our government. Optics is everything. So somehow this complete disaster of a company rewards CEO Dmitry Kosko with ringing the closing bell on the Nasdaq. Today, January 12th, 2022, Dmitry Kosko, CEO of Motorsport Games, will ring the virtual Nasdaq closing bell to celebrate a significant milestone for the company, the one-year anniversary of its IPO on the exchange. Your company at this date, what was the company's stock price on this exact date? I guess it's 6 months, eh? It was $4 a share. Sorry, I fucked up the date here. This significant milestone of your stock dropping in price from $35 a share to $4 a share is a milestone? Are you on drugs? And they're like, oh, we had such a busy year of being listed on the Nasdaq. We launched our newest installment of our flagship NASCAR video game series, NASCAR 21 Ignition. Yeah, the game that fucking sucked, that 15 people are playing right now, that has an overly negative review, or majority negative review average on Steam. That's your milestone? You bought another company? You announced a partnership with IndyCar? You ran an R Factor 2 league? Fuck, I wish I could ring. You know what? Maybe I'll start an AC league and then ask if I can ring the NASDAQ closing bell. And then I'll tell people 100 million people watched my shitty AC league. Can I ring the closing bell then? They made their own fake race department that just came out of nowhere. The one-stop shop for news and updates every fan needs. Well, it's really not, because Race Department already existed and you just made your own sim racing publication. And so much more. Yeah, you got sued a bunch of times. In just 1 year, Motorsport Games has continued to redefine the racing game genre and industry through its acquisitions, launches, partnerships, and expertise. You didn't redefine shit. You launched a failed NASCAR game, you got sued a bunch of times, you bought games that were already released by established development teams, put your name on them, claim them as your own. You told investors that 81 million people watch your shitty R Factor league, which is impossible. And you got sued a bunch of times. Yeah, Josh Man's got a good point here. 81 million fans, but NASCAR on TV only has like 7.33 million in 2018 and has gone lower. And this isn't the first example of Dimitri's attention-seeking behavior. This guy is everywhere. This is really, really funny now. So he's running a garbage company that is just a failure in every way imaginable, but they're actually going to participate in the ICR Virtual Conference 2022. Motorsport Games, a leading racing game developer, publisher, and esports ecosystem provider of official motorsport racing series throughout the world, announced Dmitry Kosko and John New, Chief Financial Officer of Motorsport Games, will participate in a fireside chat hosted by Michael Graham, Senior Managing Director at Canaccord Genuity, at the ICR Virtual Conference 2022. So it's not his only seminar that he's hosting, or participating in, I should say, because here's another one. Motorsport Games to participate in 24th Annual Needham Virtual Growth Conference. So like this company, and it's just hilarious that the Globe and Mail has like the share price here above. This company who is failing, who has brought nothing to the genre, who has released a buggy and broken game, and whose reviews are like literal just like trolls, and like honestly they look like they've been bought off. I mean, like people were literally posting gibberish in their reviews, right? And then saying, "Yep, I rate this game positive on Steam." This company is somehow, who's getting sued all these different times, is being invited to speak at all these conferences about how great they are. Bizarre. Unbelievably bizarre. Just weird. Don't forget about the NFTs. We're getting to that. And this is a great one too. Again, the attention seeking with this guy is just off the charts. So then he goes on this like TD Ameritrade Network stock show or whatever. You know, if your parents are into this stuff, they'll watch a lot of this. So he goes on this like TD Ameritrade like segment, and the host, I'm not gonna have the volume on here because I don't have my level set correctly, but it's just like the host just starts praising him for like how great he is and how great the company is and how much they've grown. And I'm trying to skip ahead here. And all they can really say is, yeah, it was founded in 2018. They make racing games and they have a bunch of partners. And then they're like, "Hey, Dimitri, like, how's your company doing?" And they show this, and it's just like, why, man? Like, the bizarre attention seeking, like, fuck, man, like, I would be ashamed of this. Like, I would be ashamed to be like, yeah, I got invited on this TD Ameritrade Network segment, and I have to go and show my failing company. It's ridiculous. And then he starts talking later on about NFTs and that they want to enter some spaces that fans haven't guessed yet. I don't know why they used Wii footage for this. They have tons of stock photo of their multiple esports competitions that they could have supplied, and they used Nintendo Wii footage. It's just weird. And then of course there's like, is this a real background? Like, it's just weird, you know? Like, something about this is not right. But like, this dude's just constantly on these like these speeches and seminars. You know what? Let's even look this up. Dmitry Kozko invited. Oh. Like, he's getting interviewed by Forbes, bro. Dmitry Kozko sees Motorsport Games as a key partner for NASCAR teams and drivers. Like, the company is just like on fire, and you have all these like respected publications just like writing like fake like fluff pieces. It's so weird, bro. Like NobleCon 18, like all these, you know, invited to speak at all these just random like conferences. It's so weird, like, what the hell? It's bizarre. So then we move on to the next like point of all this stuff. The company is obviously failing, and it's just a mess. It's a mess. So they're like, hey, let's get into the blockchain space. So here's the job application website for it. And again, people have dismissed this as rumors and speculation, tried to call me crazy and all that bullshit. Here's the job application website. Yeah, as J. Obey Max says, totally bought ego massaging pieces. It's just bizarre. So now they're like, hey, let's get into the blockchain, which of course we'll get to it in a bit, but like nobody wants. But we'll get it again. We'll get into that. I have everything in my notes here. So Motorsport Games is hiring for a senior blockchain product manager. Motorsport Games, the game developer, has brought you NASCAR Heat 5 and R Factor 2 with upcoming titles that include NASCAR Ignition, IndyCar, KartCraft, and BTCC is seeking a talented, experienced blockchain engineer strategist to design the next generation of virtual motorsport games. We're looking for a senior blockchain product manager to lead our future efforts in blockchain. Reporting to our SVP Business Development at Motorsport Games, he'll also have a voice as a core member of the leadership and strategic teams. You will own the strategy and deliver the technical product roadmap for the Motorsport Games blockchain, including NFT's plan, in close collab with leadership, engineering, and developer experience teams, as well as industry and community partners. You'll be the point lead for all product-related initiatives around the blockchain, including NFTs, browser gaming, peer-to-peer, etc. Drive improvements to overall game ecosystem and customer experience by leveraging blockchain speed, cost, scalability, and efficiency. Create and execute strategic growth plans with quantifiable results to scale our products portfolio and businesses. Leverage deep businesses and technical understanding of the blockchain industry, emergent development trends, and competitive landscape to inform the roadmap, and advise internal stakeholders on areas of risk and opportunity. Internal and external evangelization around gaming and blockchain, its virtues, benefits, future, and more. So they're actively trying to hire for this. And, you know, they want you to submit your resume and all that shit. It's their portable. It's their portal for this. Now, you're probably sitting here saying, like, oh, well, just because they're, like, they have an open position for it doesn't mean they're actually going to do it, and you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. It's already happening. So here's their Le Mans NFTs. There's the Motorsport Games logo. There's the WEC logo. Here are their NFTs, and you can just go buy them. They are just trading cards. Ultra rare. $10. I don't care. Like, I don't want any of this. No one wants any of this. So what actually are these Le Mans NFTs? Like, because what the fuck are they? Well, someone has actually bought them because they are stupid. Someone on YouTube actually bought this. So shout out to Frugal BC. He bought these. Sorry. So guy goes, Talkie, what are these? Talkie, more Talkie. What are these? I guess he's got... Oh, no, that's my ad. Okay. So I guess he bought these NFTs. So what actually are they? It's a clip from the stream of someone lagging into another guy. That's what this guy bought. That's what these NFTs are. And he's just like, okay. Like, I don't have his audio on, but he's like, oh, I guess that's what it is. Okay. Seriously. So they're selling you clips of an R Factor 2 race. I know back in the day I called them screenshots, but they're just like shitty stream clips of people netcoding it into each other in an R Factor 2 race for $10. Why? Why would you sell this to anybody? Like, there's admittedly some cool stuff you can do with NFTs. Like, one of the ideas I had was you could sell, like, the rights. Like, let's say you have a sim going and you sell an NFT. For, like, $40,000, you could sell an NFT where whoever bought it would get the rights to design a fantasy track in your game. So, like, Travis Pastrana would buy that NFT and design, like, a fictional rallycross track. And it would be, like, the Pastrana compound. It's similar to how celebrities launder money through buying art. Like, you guys know how Lars Ulrich from Metallica sells, like, a bunch of art, or, like, Paul Stanley from Kiss sells a bunch of art at, like, auctions. Well, like, the art can be used to, like, launder money. So, like, let's say you want to buy 40 grand of cocaine off someone. You sell them an NFT of, like, a shitty painting you drew. And then your bank thinks, oh, that, you know, your wife is an idiot and forced you to buy dumb art for her dining room. But in reality, you threw the painting in the garbage, and your friend handed you, you know, $30,000 or 40 grand worth of coke under the table. That's what this shit's probably for. It's just a virtual receipt for whatever you want it to be. Right now, I don't think anyone really understands how to use it. So they're selling you R Factor 2 replays where people netcode into each other, because that's what all the sim racers want, right? And again, this is very real. This site is live. You can go to it. It's nft.lemansvirtual.com/collections, and it's there. Pro Dragonfire says, surely I can go back to the YouTube video and clip the same bit of the recording, and then I own his NFT too? Yes. Yes, you can. And Motorsport Games is doing this and trying to enter this industry, and possibly ruining their reputation doing it. As places like Forbes are writing things like interest in NFTs in the metaverse is falling fast, and everyone here is just getting laughed at, being like, hey, here's the Google Trends for metaverse and NFT, and like, it's dead. Like, no one cares. And they're doing it, again, I think this article came out either yesterday or today, where the Wall Street Journal is just like, yeah, NFT sales are dead. And they say, it's like, is this the end of things? So, like, on top of their mountain of, like, legal issues and running out of money and lying to investors saying 81 million people watch R Factor 2 and saying they're going to run out of money and having this massive backstory of, hey, like, all these same people used to work at this net element company and that too was run into the ground and the CEOs got suspiciously wealthy. Now they're trying to enter this field that, like, people are getting out of and being like, oh, this is a scam, I think. We're still not done. Guys, we're still not done. Again, I've been labeled a conspiracy theorist and, oh, you're just drawing connections that aren't there. You're just a schizo. You're just drawing jumping to conclusions from reading all these random unrelated articles. Okay. So then we wake up one day and, oh, the Motorsport Games BTCC title might be delayed and President Stephen Hood leaves the company. Oh. That's not good. That's really not good. Stephen Hood left the company already on January 21st, 2022 after his position was eliminated. Oh. That's not good. On January 21st, 2022, Motorsport Games notified Stephen Hood, the company's president, that his position will be eliminated effective on the 21st, 2022. Mr. Hood will receive the following separation payments: 43,000 euros in lieu of his entitlement to 3 months termination notice, 37,000 euros in lieu of accrued but untaken holiday pay, and an extra 60,000 euros, I believe, or pounds, whatever it is. Ex gratia settlement payment, which includes statutory redundancy, is required under law. So to leave the company, the guy made like over 100 grand, 150 grand. This might be a bit small for you guys to read, but like it's there on race department. So like this company is definitely not sketchy at all, and figureheads in the company are just randomly leaving and getting paid out the ass when they leave, and it's just all a coincidence, guys. So after the BTCC game is suspiciously delayed, the BTCC content developed for it shows up in R Factor 2. Like, let's be real here. These cars were supposed to be in the actual BTCC game. They very obviously developed the assets for the BTCC game, then went, oh shit, the game's not coming, and what can we do to make a bit of money and technically still release the game? Well, let's just put it all in R Factor 2. And this isn't just the BTCC DLC in the form of cars, but suddenly it's the tracks too. Donington Park. No, I don't want push notifications. Donington Park is suddenly coming to R Factor 2. Isn't that on the BTCC schedule? Oh, what about Brands Hatch? Oh, it is. Look at that. So all these pieces of content that would definitely be in a BTCC game because they're on the BTCC schedule, and it's those cars, are now suddenly coming to R Factor 2 as DLC. Yeah, asset flipped. But this is all a coincidence, 100%. Well, oh no, then we woke up and suddenly Marcel Offerman's the managing director of Studio 397, which is a company that Motorsport Games owns. Suddenly Marcel Offerman's is gone too. Wow, didn't Stephen Hood just leave and now Marcel Offerman's? What's happening here? This is very strange. Oh, and Dylan Hale points out too. Hey, weren't they working on an IndyCar game? And then that got released as DLC, right? Yeah, that's odd. All these assets that were supposed to appear in their own motorsport games, reject. All these assets that were supposed to appear in their own releases are now suddenly just being quickly thrown into R Factor 2. This is not strange at all, and this is all happening after the company announced that, hey, we're losing a shit ton of money and might not last through the year. This is just all a massive coincidence, guys. There's nothing suspicious operating under the hood. Oh, except all these people are leaving too. Oh, and then again, we're not done yet. I'm going through everything this stream because remember, this is all just speculation, right? Oops. NASCAR 22 has been canceled. So, we're not going to get a NASCAR 22 this year. We're going to get a season expansion for NASCAR 21. You know, the game that, what is it? 15 people are playing right now? Yeah, so we're actually going to get a $30 expansion pack, probably, for the game. And it'll have all the new cars. They're going to put out, you know, a NASCAR Heat game with the 2022 cars for the Nintendo Switch only, but you're actually not getting a NASCAR game this year, nor are you getting a BTCC game that was announced coming out this year, like years ago. And then you're just going to get a bunch of DLC for the DLC for the game that came out last year that nobody plays. This is not weird at all. It has nothing to do with the company that is currently facing financial problems and lawsuits and has a suspicious backstory in Net Element. It's all just a coincidence. And it's, you know what, it's actually a good thing, according to some Twitter people and YouTube people, because, oh, it shows they're listening and that they're going to continue to patch the game, and it's better than a yearly sports franchise. Well, no, like, the core game has to be good, or at least good enough that more than 15 people play it. How are you getting this narrative that all RF2 content is ported unused content? That's because that's how game development works. You have an asset library. Like, if you look at Grid Legends here, I'll give you a good example. So Grid Legends stock car, let me see if I can find a shot of it. I don't remember what they call it. Grid Legends, fuck it, we'll go to Google. So this car right here. Where is it? This car, right? So this is in Grid Legends. I want you to take a close look at this specific car. This is the same car model. It's the model from Project Cars. So once Codemasters bought Slightly Mad Studios, they had what's called the SMS Asset Library, right? All the 3D models that SMS has ever made, Codemasters now owns. So when they needed a car for Grid Legends, a 90 stock car, they put a new nose on the Caper Monterey. Right? Yeah. And Hale, you've got a good point here. The Formula X car that we saw in Project Cars 2, which is kind of like a 90s car on crack. People say it's like a Formula 1 car. I don't think it is. It's a kart car. Right? So that car... Let's make life easier on us. Where's the Formula car? You can tell I'm prepared, but I'm not super prepared. The unknown IndyCar that they haven't... Or I guess they call it the Formula X in this game, right? SMS made their Formula X fantasy car. Again, I think it's an Indy car. They call it Formula X, but it's Indy. It's card. Once Codemasters bought SMS, they had this in their asset library and said, "Hey, we need this fantasy F1 car for Grid Legends," and there it is. So, again, because all the games run on the R Factor 2 engine, like NASCAR 21 Ignition, presumably the BTCC game and IndyCar game as well, with the company's future looking uncertain, all of these cars that were developed for these BTCC and IndyCar games, they're just like, quick, sell them in R Factor as DLC. That's all it is. But as we go back to the roadmap, like NASCAR 22 is canceled, and multiple high-ups across several companies Motorsport Games owns have all just suspiciously left within a couple months of each other. Right? Nothing is happening here. This is all just massive coincidence, right? It's just me starting rumors. The other rumor too that's going around is that NASCAR is looking to leave. This was first reported by Sports Gamers Online. I've talked to this guy. He says a couple people from Motorsport Games apparently reached out to him, and it's real. But the story goes that NASCAR is trying to find a new home for its video game license. Oops, didn't mean to click that. Since its launch in October 21, NASCAR Ignition has been widely panned for being a game that shouldn't have been released when it was. The game launched in such a broken state with countless bugs and numerous missing features. Many felt were basic inclusions, like stage racing, which we covered. Multiple sources have told SGL that NASCAR is actively looking for ways to get out of its current agreement with Motorsport Games. The sources say that NASCAR would like to bring its license to a different publisher and developer within the next couple of years. NASCAR isn't happy. There's a reason they don't even promote their own game on any broadcasts. It's because they don't want to be associated with a game as broken as NASCAR 21 is. Now, NASCAR has publicly commented on this. This is where things get kind of interesting. NASCAR has publicly commented on Jalopnik saying, hey, NASCAR and Motorsport Games have a long-standing relationship in place and the status of our partnership remains in good standing. Is that so? On LinkedIn, NASCAR is hiring a gaming manager. And it's actually on NASCAR's own internal website they use for job applications. Yeah, we're definitely totally not going to distance ourselves from Motorsport Games, but we're conveniently hiring a person and just posted the ad right as the story broke that we actually are hiring someone to help us navigate the world of video games. And it's definitely not related to this clusterfuck of a company we've partnered with who is damaging our brand. This is just a massive coincidence, guys. Massive coincidence. That we're hiring someone that can help us navigate the world of games. You're going to oversee the day-to-day activities of NASCAR video game licensees across console, PC, mobile platforms, and other emerging sectors. But this definitely has nothing to do with the current partnership. Why would you need to hire someone for this if the partnership's in good standing and is going to last for the next 10 years? Why would you need to fill this position? It's just a coincidence, guys, right? And finally, after all of this fuckfest that we spent 2 hours covering, it's resulted in a 632% raise for our boy Dmitry Kozko, according to execpay.org. Motorsport Games reported fiscal year 2021 executive compensation information on April 27, 2022. In 2021, 3 executives at Motorsport Games received on average a compensation package of $2.2 million, a 427% increase compared to the previous year. Dmitry Kozko, CEO, received $5.4 million in total, which increased by 632% compared to 2020. I wish I got paid a 600% raise for putting out a product that 13 people play, or 15. It was 15, right? This is ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. This company exists to make this guy a shitload of money, and his friends. CFO, Jonathan New, who, as we described earlier in this video, was a higher up at Net Element, alongside Costco, received a compensation package of close to $700,000, which increased by 144% compared to the previous year. 51% of the compensation package, or $345K, was in salary. Stephen Hood, president, earned $500,000 in 2021, a 124% increase compared to the previous year. This is why motorsport games exist. These dudes all made fuck tons of money. They don't even care about the game. This is why this company exists. Is something wrong about this? These people sold a product that 15 people play. And has glowing reviews such as HGK, JJ, SJ, HK, HG, 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 NNNNN. That review was great. This dude received $5 million for his efforts. This year. Or last year, I should say. Is this not incredibly odd to anyone? And again, this isn't speculation, this is just right here. Like, what the fuck is going on? So this brings us to the end of this broadcast. I have gone through literally every single one of my sources that I've used to make videos on this topic. From Net Element and the history of that company and all the higher ups involved with that company, and how they all landed at Motorsport Games, and how the CEO Dimitri tapped to run Net Element went from being, Inc.'s #1 to, oh god, this guy's shady as fuck, and like got sued a bunch of times and has all these Russian scam artist friends. We've covered how Net Element and Mullen, the companies merged, were all under investigation. We've covered both major lawsuits against Motorsport Games. We've covered how they purchased R Factor 2 and R Factor 2 was kind of trash. We've covered, I'm just going through the list here. We've covered how even NASCAR Heat 5 couldn't ship with a finished menu. We've covered how they blow money on race car sponsorships, how they invented their own race department, and how the race department site they invented or created out of thin air was on a NASCAR Cup car like a week later. Covered both lawsuits, covered how Fernando Alonso was a pawn in their financial scheme, covered NASCAR 21's glitches, covered both investor calls and some of the weird claims they made in them, covered the bogus Steam reviews that literally give the game a positive rating and then say don't buy it, which is bizarre. We've covered their stock prices. We've covered how Dimitri is like a narcissist and goes on all these like not investor calls, but rather conferences and TV appearances and ringing the NASDAQ closing bell and like celebrates himself as like a savvy businessman, but he's very clearly not. We've covered how they want to get into the blockchain technology, how they're hiring for it. We've shown not just their NFT site, but someone who actually bought their NFTs and how they're literally just clips from an R Factor stream. We've shown how interest in NFTs, as according to Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, are dead. We've covered all these random high-ups leaving the company. We've covered how they asset flip the assets developed for the BTCC IndyCar and I think one other game into R Factor 2. We've covered how NASCAR 22 was canceled, how NASCAR was looking to leave, or rumored to be looking to leave, and then, came out and denied those to Jalopnik, but then are suspiciously hiring someone to oversee development of NASCAR games, which is pretty much exactly who they'd need to hire to get them out of the mess that they're in with Motorsport Games, and to make sure it never happens again. Why are they hiring someone for that role when they claim that they don't need that role to Jalopnik? Kind of interesting. And again, lastly, we've covered how Dimitri Costco is the only one who seems to be like seriously profiting off this whole thing, as well as a couple other high-ups, that some of which are carryovers, such as Jonathan New from the Net Element days, where the same thing happened. It's a mess, guys. So how are people reacting to this? This is a pretty long investigation. Thank you for being here for 2 hours, or whatever this ended up being. Football's going to be on soon, so I'm going to have to wrap this up shortly. How are people reacting to this? How do people on the R Factor forum take all of this information? Someone starts a thread on it. It's YouTuber drama, guys. And that drama gets you clicks. And that Austin is one of the biggest trolls around. He has stalked people online, is permabanned from iRacing for being a troll. He seems smart, but definitely has some mental health issues. I would take whatever he says with a grain of salt.